absolute zero raincoats were brought to the circuit yesterday. So we certainly said the phrase of failed to prepare, prepare to fail, as we all got right now we're soaking on our way back to the nearby hotel. Here's Joe Roberts and a familiar face in different team colours to our left as you look. That is Uchioni Castro, who is now the crew chief for Joe Roberts down at Advance American Racing. Of course, crew chief at Park VDS with Tony Arbolino in recent times. In Joe we trust. In evidence of this morning, enough reason to trust in Joe Roberts. He was 16th at the end of practice today. Pre-practice one this morning, but only 3/4 of a second off the pace. He's likely to be in that zone, that close battle for the places in Q2. Will Q2 include this man? Rankinet a little bit behind the 8-ball after what happened this morning. A crash at turn 1, which saw him do around about half the laps of everybody else in the field. And if his confidence was being built in his early time, we might be getting some board to score on. Taking a little bit of a psychological touch earlier today.
Yeah, thankfully Canet is all okay. It was quite a nasty looking crash down at turn 1. The front end went pretty early, where we really saw the aftermath. We didn't see quite how it unfolded to start with for Canet, but yeah, not an ideal start because he was here on Friday for Canet, who of course is having to adapt his riding style a little bit on the new Boscoscuro, adapting to new surroundings as well, but the bike was able to be repaired before the last 5 minutes of the session. Not quite sure what that's meant to be, but fair play, I like the look anyway. Always passionate here, the fans. It's not just the Thai locals who are here, people from this side of the world who are living out here on holiday, etc., a brilliant treat to come to anyway on holiday. Of course, MotoGP are in town. There's a fantastic event here at the Chang International Circuit. We highly recommend it to anyone, and yeah, the fans are already hunting for them this weekend. And that was Ivan Ortola who we were looking at. He had a decent session this morning, 2nd in time at top 10, less than half a second off, but P9 again just showing the competitiveness of Moto2 has not gone away so far in 2026, and I guarantee it won't be going anywhere anytime soon.
Last year's Thai Grand Prix winner Manu Gonzalez, who was a fast S this morning, but perhaps the most impressive when you look at the lap-by-lap analysis of what we saw earlier on today. It's not the representative conditions for the race. This is a bit more akin to race start time. The Grand Prix on Sunday, Moto2, which will be run over 22 laps, gets underway at 1:15 in the afternoon. You look through the number of 135s that everyone did this morning, which generally came on their second run of the session. David Alonso, he put in 5 of them. Ethan Guevara put in 7, which included 2 on his first run of pre-practice 1. Philip Salanch, he also did 5. Colin Vaya likewise did 5. Nick Gonzalez, by contrast, did 9 laps in the 135s earlier on today. He went out at the end of the session, or midway through the session, in truth, and did a run of 12 consecutive time laps. The first 6 of them were all between a 1:35.4 and a 1:35.8. We knew from last year that Manuel Gonzalez was a bit of an FP1 merchant, but with Gonzalez was entering 2026 with the intention of quickly signing to history what happened to him in the latter part of last year. He was going the right way about it earlier on today.
Yeah, I think the Manu Gonzalez in 2025 on display this morning, wasn't it? Spoke to him numerous times, pretty much every weekend, to be honest. Last year, Manu Gonzalez on a Friday, and it was always the same scenario. He had such a good base set up on that Alex Triumph last year that whenever he landed at the circuit, he was comfortable straight away and was able to work on his race pace immediately. He wasn't having to change too much on the bike, and that seems pretty evident again here in Thailand. Of course, as Lewis mentioned, the winner here last year did pretty comfortably as well. So yeah, Gonzalez looking very, very comfortable so far. But of course, there was others that were quicker than him this morning, and obviously as we go through the weekend, everyone's going to build up some pace as well. So first, let's say half of this session, we're going to learn a lot more potentially about race pace. We're going to learn a lot about tomorrow morning, of course. Well, hopefully it's dry so we can really get stuck into the analysis of that. And time tactical, of course, at the end of play in around about 40 minutes time. But Gonzalez, as expected, coming to Thailand, is looking in very, very fine fettle.
About the Emu Sasaki then on the new colours of the Moto RW Racing team. Sasaki was in 15th place at the end of pre-practice one earlier on today. This is Elias teammates on Tsunami Borberg, only about a tenth of a second between them. It's new ownership down there at the RW squad. Emu Sasaki, one of several riders who ended 2025 on the injured list, broke his ankle in the early stages of the Valencia weekend, didn't even make it into race day, and also underwent arm pump surgery after the 2025 season completed as well. Not the first time since riding Moto2 that he has had to undergo arm pump surgery. Who will be pumping the pressure on their rivals this afternoon. Practice is underway. 40 minutes to decide if you're new to the format. Top 14 at the end of this practice session will put their automatic place in qualifying 2. Those 15 backwards, then to go through qualifying 1 tomorrow afternoon. Moto2 qualifying precedes the TISO sprint. Right about this time tomorrow.
Yeah, so an important session coming up. As always, Tony Arbolino just cycled himself and then heading back out on his Frantic Racing Calyx. Back to Calyx this year. Arbolino we didn't touch upon his misfortunes last year. A very disappointing year last year. Did the Italian finishing P19 and only one podium to show for it, replacing the Elfmark VBS pounds. And he's already gone there. Of course, now Aaron Canet in the Frantic Racing squad alongside Barry Bautis. A very exciting lineup over at Frantic Racing. Finished third and fourth last year, thanks to the efforts of Bautis and Canet, who were team champions last year as well with Frantic Racing. They'll be wanting to double up in 2026, but do the same again. Green flag waves, I can see no sign of the white and the red flag that indicates spots of rain are in the air, which is good news. We had that for one of the Moto3 session. No such troubles or issues or worries. The Moto2 ride will going to take the long start lap in rookie tyre Kurosato, finished 24 earlier on today to Kurosato, but again 1.4 seconds off as a rookie. First competitive session, that is not a bad job done at all, but some of the rookies are going to have to start getting used to seeing their name down at the time sheets. That's I think a big mental hurdle you have to get over when you move it into new classes, to obviously usually see your name to the top of the time sheets. Obviously top Vazgatlioglu has said this numerous times across pre-season, getting over that mental hurdle of not seeing yourself inside that top 3, top 5 or whatever, and seeing yourself down in P-Tubs 4, P-Tubs 5, as is the case for some of the riders. It's a difficult thing to get over, but for Kurosato, I spoke to him earlier on in the weekend, yesterday in fact, and he's coming to Thailand with no expectations. A very short pre-season for everyone, including of course unfortunately so for the rookies. So a big weekend coming up to learn a lot of new things on the Calyx trial, as is the case for us.
Yeah, the 2 leading rookies this morning were pretty closely matched actually. Angel Becerras and Luca Lanetta 11th and 12th, and that's pretty much in line with what we saw at the Jerez test when they were clearly the 2 leading rookies. Kurosato and Elliott mentioned having a difficult introduction. Alberto Ferrandez, teammate to this man, Ethan Guevara, the Blue Crew Pramac squad, also arrived in the European Championship, and Jose Antonio Rueda, of course, really up up against it to get himself ready, both physically and mentally, for the new season. The Moto3 World Champion. He for sure will get there, but he won't get there in the early stages of the season. If he does, then he has done a Herculean job. As Guevara tackles the final corner, turn 12. Final sector this morning, Guevara was very, very quick. What's he been like over the line this time? He's actually completing his outlap and starting his first time lap of the afternoon. And once again, as he was for a lot of testing, looks like Moto2's best bet this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And riding a Bosco last year was even Antonio back on the Calyx. But this year, well, Antonio's first time on the Calyx, but the team switching to Calyx, and that is already the fastest time of the weekend, 35.0, 83 and 35.148 was Alonso's fastest time this morning. So clearly, plenty of time to be found in the much improved conditions for around about half an hour ago, which is good news for the Moto2 riders. Alonso being chased there by Garcia and Dennis Onchu. A decent session this morning for Onchu. I think leaving the test, what we were seeing, it was tough times, I think, down in the Alpmark BDS box for race winners. Onchu didn't connect. Onchu, P14 is not, of course, where he wants to be, but 11 tenths off again, not where he wants to be, but in Moto2 terms, it's quite a long way, but also not too far away at the same time, especially in your first session when the practice did not go according to plan. And, of course, Onchu had a terrible time with injuries last year, so great to see the 53 turn back on the bike, and importantly, about all the competitive as a team that gets in a little bit out of shape there through the fast turn 7. You don't want to be crashing anywhere, especially not through turn 7 though.
Yeah, we're already crashing at turn 1 earlier on this morning. No backward steps from Aaron Canet. That's not really in his DNA, is it? As Guevara gets straight into the 134s. 134, 952, 4B28, who, albeit some 4 months apart, is going for back-to-back victories in Moto2 here this weekend. Something that young man has achieved. Pedro Acosta, the 2023 World Champion. Taking a close look at the class of 2026. Well, 2 of whom may well join him in MotoGP next year. Vietti now on a 34.8. It's Bosco scorer 1 and 2 earlier.
Certainly it was all-time that record, incidentally, 134.591 set by Manu Gonzalez in last year's Grand Prix. So we're a million miles away already from the all-time lap record. And 34.8 very, very early into Moto2 Practice. So will we see the all-time lap record coming later on in this session? Probably so. This is Alex Screens. Didn't mention it too much this morning. He wasn't on our timing screens into the sharp end too much, but ended P13 and of course ended the rev test, I should say, in P1. So do watch out for the Clint Racing team.
Yeah, rather curious morning for the Clint squad. Not sure about Tommy Navarro. Only did 3 laps earlier on this morning. Whether that was a conscious decision or there were some problems with the machinery. Hopefully they're running on full gas this afternoon, because, as Al said, we're expecting some pretty decent things from Alexis Scridge here this afternoon. Perhaps from this man too, Celestino Vietti for the Speed RS team as Ivan Guevara improves again. 134.686. We are now within a tenth of a second of the all-time lap record of Manu Gonzalez. Could it be broken here by Chele, who's now got to find a couple of tenths to get on terms with his fellow Bosco scorer. The number 13 enters turn number 12 on this 12-corner around circuit. Vietti does not improve. It's a 35.0 for him. It's Guevara, Vietti, Gonzalez, your top 3 as Sasaki now gets himself into the 34s. Way quicker than we've seen from him so far today. Gonzalez now 4 better. Polgado, Ortola, Anchi, Van den Gorberg, Salac, and Onchu with Aegis, Bantus, Arbolino, and the aforementioned Escreech currently walking at your top 14. There's plenty of time for that all to chop and change.
Yeah, absolutely. The times then already tumbling here in Moto2. Bringing riders into the 134s already, as Lewis rightly mentioned, the 34.6 for Guevara, very, very close to this rider's all-time lap record. Manu Gonzalez, he's incidentally moved up into P4 as things stand in his latest lap, 3 out, 3 lap times for Manu Gonzalez on the number 18 lap time cancelled this time round, so he's not going to improve, but a rider's going for a time attack early doors, then they'll settle into a little bit of a rhythm mid-section and then go again for more time attack later on. Hard to tell what the plans are. This is quicker than we were expecting already. Where is David Alonso in these early exchanges? Down in P18, looking to worry about too much so far. But a lot of the riders pushing on a little bit more than the number 80 so far in in this session, including the Sasaki on that. I quite like the new livery down there, the RW team, and of course you can see there the new sort of side bearings that Kalex have stuck onto their machines as well. Some nice aero updates. You can see them on Holgado's 96 machine as well. And speaking to some of the riders, as Holgado potentially goes quickest, no, just locked into second place, but very, very close behind Guevara. They can't feel too much of it this different side. But there is clearly a little margin to the game in terms of lap time, so that's why the riders are continuing to use it, or most of them are continuing to use it in Thailand to this weekend.
The RW squad didn't run it at all early stage last season, perhaps due to the costs incurred by running it. So a bit of a fresh injection, new ownership this season. They are running the latest kit on Kalex, as Guevara is getting a little bit agitated for one reason or another. Either way, I'm happy with how Freddie stands at the moment. Perhaps some discomfort in the pump to the back of his leathers, potentially for Ethan, who really has worked hard on his physical condition too. It's memorable when he first came into Moto2 as the Moto3 champion of 2022. But he really struggled physically with the demands of Moto2. Also, I think given some rather harsh home truths told to him by his then Aspar team, that he really had to up his physical regime to meet the demands of Moto2, which he certainly has done now. Not only has he done that, but he's also now put himself up to speed with the technical demands and the level of feedback that you need to give in this Moto2 class, which isn't really a demand put upon you in Moto3. So he's come quite a long way, perhaps in a longer time than we would have expected, given how strong he was through the Junior World Championship and Moto3, of course a winner in both. It definitely looks like we're seeing the Ethan Guevara that so many expected to see when he was looking at the lower classes.
Yeah, he really put it back himself there. An 8-time Grand Prix winner now, of course, 7 of those come in Moto3, and due to the rise with Guevara through the road to MotoGP ranks, the European Talent List will be 2020 Moto Junior champion as well, and then of course went on to win the Moto3 championship in 2022. I think we all expected, and obviously Guevara did as well. He hit Moto2 sort of like a Ralph Fernandez or Pedro Acosta, and take to immediately and go on to be in MotoGP by this time. That is not how it's played out, thankfully. I mean, that win at the end of last year was massive, wasn't it, for Guevara? It's slowly been coming, but to go into the winter finally with that victory under your belt must have been a great feeling for the Spaniards. And obviously, as we see now, very early stage in the season before finally repeated playing on it, but to hit the ground running here in Thailand, I think just shows that Guevara hasn't fully nailed it yet. He still needs to back that win up with a few more podiums and victories, and then hopefully mount a title charge. But potentially, Guevara is now properly arriving in Moto2 and is ready to win more races and put himself in the frame for the potential future MotoGP ride as well, which is good to see.
Interesting, just keeping an eye on some of the lap times that have been set out there at the moment as the rubber starts to wear down on the tyres. Perhaps potentially a leapfrog that we'll see in the race on Sunday. Both Manu Gonzalez and Daniel Holgado doing 35.1s out there at the moment. But interesting though, Alonso did a 35.7 on his previous lap. He's now just done a 35.8. At the moment, Alonso not with the pace. But with two riders in particular who are standing out on track, that's probably Gonzalez and Alonso's teammate Daniel Holgado, who is the number 80. Suspect that he might well be on the tyres he finished this morning's session with. The pressure rubber will certainly come later on this afternoon, and the threat of any rain looks to have passed down for the rest of the afternoon. Touch wood in with the commentary box. So the Aspar team are not in a situation where they have to throw a soft tyre with this early to get on top of the court. They can get their homework done and then trust Alonso to deliver in time attack mode late on in the session. I think it's fair to say now that there was perhaps one thing that Alonso, even when he did get to grips with Moto2 and race true, one thing that he still hadn't always got nailed down was his ability to qualify well.
Yeah, so that's what he's going to be looking to improve this year. Only 2 front row starts in qualifying last year, and obviously with his pace on a Sunday just turns up the whip slightly, doesn't he, Alonso? One of these special riders who, no matter where he qualifies or what he does throughout the rest of the weekend, you know that come Sunday he is going to take a step up in level. But if you're going to want to challenge for titles, which of course he did in Moto3, and everyone is fully expecting him to do in Moto2. You've got to sort out qualifying in order we're wanting to build on those two quick row starts in qualifying that he achieved last year. That all, of course, starts in Thailand this weekend. You can't be giving yourself too much opportunity to give an advantage to the chasing pack when you're qualifying not inside the top six. You've got to give yourself a better chance on that. Listen, no matter how good you are in race trim, like Moto is. I spoke to him down on the grid yesterday and I did sort of put the question to him, how are we trying to manage expectations knowing you'll be coming in? There's a lot of people fight for favourites, and the very clever young lads who knows that people have got a lot of eyes on him. Rumours are that he's already signed a MotoGP contract for next year with HRC. We're of course waiting to see how all of the silly season unravels in MotoGP, and then that's going to filter down into Moto2 as well. Potentially with the pressure off, not having to fight for his future, essentially. Just takes maybe a little bit of the edge off in terms of needing to push for qualifying times when potentially you'd want to be impressing. So I think for Alonso, what I got from yesterday, and how we know he is as a character anyway, is not putting any pressure on himself. He's a cool, calm and collected customer, knows what he's going to go out and do this year, knows what he wants to achieve, which is of course the Moto2 title, and knows that if he doesn't win this weekend, it's okay. If he doesn't finish on the podium, it's okay. Don't make any silly mistakes. Pick up a decent haul of points, and then go on to Brazil, Austin, Qatar before we get back to Europe, and just build up a nice chunk of points. He didn't have a top 10 until Silverstone this year. See, that's not what he's going to do this year. Fully expected him not to do that again, but that's something he wants to build upon this year. Just not put too much pressure on himself to go out there and just glitter everyone.
One narrative I'm really looking forward to following as we go through this Moto2 season is the inter-team rivalry. Just kind of briefly this morning with the inter-team rivalry at that spot from two riders who were fully expecting to challenge for the championship this season in Daniel Alonso and last year's Rookie of the Year, Daniel Holgado. I think there is a healthy competition between the two in the box. Fair to say that spilled over a couple of times last year when they ran into each other in Jerez and in Aragon. I think you can argue that each of them were playing for one of those two incidents and one of them for the other. I guess as an Aspar team, if that rivalry is a professional rivalry that drives the two to just go to bigger and better heights and to make each other faster, then you're quite happy just to let that simmer in the background as long as the two don't take each other out of Grand Prix as they did in two of the Spanish visits last year.
Yeah, that is going to be a fascinating watch, and the Aspar team led by Jorge Martinez Aspar, of course, very experienced, know exactly what they've got on each side of the box in Moto2, and we know how to deal with things if they do get a little bit overheating, which they did, of course, sometimes last year. Now, they weren't challenging for the title last year, as you say, because I think as most people will expect, judging from what we've seen last year and throughout their Grand Prix careers, we are fully expecting Holgado and Alonso to be right up there challenging for the title, along with potentially Barry Bottas, who's just coming through front and centre of your screen. We're focusing on Joe Roberts. This lap isn't going to go anywhere for the American in terms of the times. Plenty of narratives in Moto2 that we always is, but the Holgado versus London rivalry. But Holgado won last year. Let's put it plainly. Holgado got the better of Alonso in their rookie campaign last year. We know both of them are ultra competitive, and we know, speaking of Holgado, who really what he said last year, seeing Alonso pick up that first podium, he was revved up to go and do the same, and that's exactly what they did. He picked up an extra win versus Alonso last year as well. So Holgado versus Alonso is a narrative we're going to be watching very closely indeed, and I'm really intrigued to see how it plays out, and if both of them, one of them, actually all of them, but I don't think that's going to be the case, as we've already mentioned. Maybe stepping up to MotoGP next year.
Some rumours, as El's already alluded to, whatever the Moto's heading this year. One or two rumours to potentially a move into MotoGP for Daniel Holgado, potentially the likeliest destination for him being the Tech 3 KTM squad, alongside who knows, quite frankly, because it looks like Maverick Vinales might well be moving up the level in terms of the KTM company ladder from satellite to factory. We'll discuss that further as we get through the MotoGP sessions both this weekend and as the season unfolds. It doesn't sound like we're waiting that long for some official announcements to be dropped in terms of rider signings for the new generation of MotoGP next year. So we pick up Angel Piqueras on the MSI Calex. A reminder, if you were with us this morning, they have now switched from Boscoscuro to Calex. The first biggest switches Top Practice made from World Superbike to MotoGP. They are very close, aren't they? As close as brothers. The Turkish contingent, two of them are brothers, the Untitled twins. Denny's here in Moto2 and Chan in World Supersport, but they spent a lot of time training both on track and in the gym with Top Practice there on screen. Despite the fact that he's got his first big MotoGP 1 hour practice session to come, Top Practice lending some moral and potentially technical support to Denny's.
Yeah, what a boost that is for Denny's to have one of his best mates, and of course family as well, in the box and in the same paddock as Denny's this season. It's going to be a big help, of course. You know, a very experienced head on the Top Practice. That's going to be, of course, he's new to the Grand Prix paddock, so he's also going to be learning from Denny's this year. But you know, I want to keep an eye on that. A fantastic relationship they've got going and helping one another. Top Practice, of course, we've seen him twice now. Relationship they've got going and helping one another. Top Practice, of course, we've seen him twice now. Relationship they've got going and how fantastic relationship they've got going.
On your screens while Alonso was regrouping in the box, he did 14 consecutive laps. They were all between a mid and a high 1:35. I was going to draw attention to it just as the run's completed that Holgado's run was 40 faster than Alonso, as did Gonzalez. At the end of the run, Holgado was down into the low to mid 36s, whereas Alonso looked like there he was able to set a very reliable, comfortable pace in the mid to high 135s, which as race pace goes is pretty fearsome for the rest of Moto2.
Yeah, nice indicator then of where we might sit on Sunday. Of course, a few more laps to go in this session, and of course in FP2 tomorrow. Qualifying, don't think about the race apart from where you're going to be starting it from. Those such long runs in qualifying, but yeah, FP2 will learn a little bit more. But Alonso, as expected, looking super consistent here in Thailand.
Just taking a look at last year's race pace, of course, different conditions, different, everything, so you can't necessarily draw them side by side, but Manu Gonzalez's race pace until lap 12 was in the 135s, then he dropped up into the 36s for the second half of the race. So what David Alonso has just done is pretty much bang in line with the pace that Manu Gonzalez was setting when he won last year's Thai Grand Prix.
Numbers, not bad at all.
Yeah,
the Colombian. So yeah, a little mark laid down then from one of the title favourites coming into this season. This is Celestino Vietti clean pushing on that Oscar, and he is up inside the top three so far. Vietti, a good session after when he finished this morning.
I mean, 18 he was higher than that for much of the morning, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was struggling to find it. I did sort of remember him being a little bit further up, but he's further up this time round. He's just lost time though in the third split. But this is sort of now igniting the time attacks coming at the end of play here on Friday in the Moto2 class. Vietti down into the final corner, turn 12, and then get on the gas as soon as possible. A smooth exit, a short run to the line, loses more time, but maybe on this lap he's going to improve after a little bit of a bank of time and warming up those top legs.
We've only got probably 1, 2, 3, 4 riders on the racetrack. Two more just joined them, the two Alpine BDS Poscascuros of Lane, Unchu and Kinet, who are 11th and 21st respectively. Well, that sound like a broken record. I've said this for years in Moto2, but it is so close. But half a second between two riders, amounts to 10 places. Less than a second covers the top 20 at the moment. From Guevara back to Danny Munoz in 20th place. A group that includes this man, Seneracius. There was another rider this morning who's long run looks pretty competitive. Mentioned that no one did as many 135s as Manu Gonzalez. He did 9 of them. Seneracius, he put in 5 himself in the latter stage of the session. So his pace looked like he's potentially in that podium group. It's going to be so crucial tomorrow afternoon to qualify well. We're talking about road to the grid being decided by a matter of hundredths of a second. You make one sort of mistake, if you break 5 metres late into one corner, you miss an apex by half a metre, you're potentially going to lose a row or two on the grid.
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw that last year, didn't we? So many times riders would lose out by a tenth of a second and a couple of tenths of a second in Thyssen. Qualifying trim can cost you a whole heap of places, of course, in practice. If you're outside the top 14, it doesn't really matter where you finish, you're going into Q1 no matter what. But of course, in qualifying, when you miss out by a tenth or two, it can cost you 3, 4, maybe even 5 rows the further down you go. As Manu Gonzalez timing, it's shaped through turn 4, not where he wants to be, having a bit of a front end moment.
Looks like he hasn't got the confidence on the front end of that Poscascuro. We saw him crash this morning, and that's the second time now this afternoon where it doesn't look as if Kinet's got full trust and full support in the front end of that Poscascuro. Unchu looks like he's got a bit more confidence because he's gobbling up the distance, and now he's going to go past Aaron Kinet, who moves out of the way not to impede his teammate in the final sector, because this could be a Q2 provisional lap for Unchu. Good third sector too, he's pulled time back on Guevara, who was the current reference point on the 134.686. Surely you're going to have to be in the 34s here to get yourself into qualifying 2. At the moment, the cut-off is a 35.3. That is only going to drop as Unchu drops anchor into the final corner. Turn 12 down to 60 or so kilometres an that corner and he loses time in that final sector and doesn't improve on his 11th place.
Yeah, surprised at that from 1-2. Didn't look like he made any sort of real error there, and I think the team were a bit confused as to why he's lost that time as well. But he wasn't too far off his own personal best lap time, but he was slow enough to not improve and put the pressure on his next lap. We'll see what Cadet can do when he follows his teammate Dennis on to down into turn 3. There you go, a little bit of chance here on the front end, but it's not cost him too much time to the naked eye. Now then, Keras with Dickens here, he's on a very good lap time. Keras, he's been shuffled outside the top 14 as things stand. An even better search, but then Keras is right in touch with Ivan Guevara's top time. And if he could just navigate past, I think it's Garcia that's just ahead of him on the road. Garcia on a personal best lap himself. Garcia has sat out of it, so one more corner to go for the rookie. Is he about to promote himself inside the top 14 or maybe even further?
Garcia did get out of the way, so we'll find out now how much time Keras lost. The line comes up now. Didn't lose too much. Caught a second giving it to Guevara, but we know how good Guevara is in that final set. So Keras has got into that magic 134 bracket, which we feel is going to be necessary to make your way into Q2. Keras, at this stage, he's ahead of his teammate, Ivan Moto2.
As well, we're expecting those guys to obviously put some fresh rubber in and go a bit quicker, but that is really, really impressive from Angel Keras, who ultimately had a disappointing Moto3 year last year. In the same team, of course, moves up in familiar surroundings, but Keras is taken to Moto2 like a duck to water. Now then, Canet is going to improve again, but Gonzalez just ahead on the road. He's going to improve, but goes P3 to shuffle Keras, Sasaki and Vietti down one spot, but still, it's Ivan Guevara who sits in the pit still. Is there an issue with Guevara? I'm not quite sure. I actually saw him come in and complain about something, but it didn't look like it was on the clock. But Guevara just impatient in the pit so far. I think he does need to get out pretty soon. I think he is fairly safe in P1, but you can never be sure.
Benji's not safe enough now on a 34.7. It's 3 and 4 now for the Liquid Moly Dynamo intact squad. Within half a tenth of each other, both on 134.7. You saw Barry Bounters there behind Agius, who's just starting a time lap, and Bounters is on the bubble at the moment, in 14th place on that 135.307. So he is far from confident, particularly with the number of orange crash helmets currently on our timing streaks.
Yeah, I was just looking at Alonso. He's now down in P19 after that impressive race simulation, let's call it, that we saw him do earlier on in the session. He is now on an out lap and just started, I think, a flying lap as well. So watch out for the number 2. Keep an eye on his time when he gets onto a lap there. He is just coming across the line at the top of the intention to start his time attack run. Manu Gonzalez is riding when he's been focusing, although he's just set a very impressive third split indeed, over 2 tenths under.
It's interesting to see in the various sectors who's strong where, because Guevara's clearly got the 4th sector bottomed up. Gonzalez through the 3rd sector is very, very quick. What about Joe Roberts? Needs to be fast in all sectors really to lift himself up from 22nd. He goes private 9 places into 13th. Gonzalez then 134.504, and for the first time in 2026 we could say the words all-time lap record. It doesn't change rider, but it is a new record for Manu Gats.
Yeah, it certainly does. Manu Gonzalez, a new all-time lap record there in Thailand, and just right there on the panels, spots of rain clearly in the air and coming down because the white and red flag is waving. So Gonzalez will potentially set that lap time just in the nick of time, and maybe Joe Roberts has down there as well. And this is not good news for David Alonso, who is outside of the top 20 now.
Yeah, this could be a little precarious for Alonso if this rain gets heavier. It's not affecting lap times at the moment. We do still have a lot of overall best and personal best sectors, including Gonzalez through the first 2 sectors, who's up on himself. Moto's also done the fastest second sector. Alex Escrich, the Jerez Test's topper, is now getting up to speed. He's fastest through the second sector, so this is all going to change if the rain holds off. Holgado over the line, stays in 3rd. Sasaki climbs up to 5th. What an afternoon he's having on a 134.8, but look at the times from Escrich and Ortola. Escrich currently 17th. He's bound to improve on that.
He is coming through the 3rd split, less than 10th off. You see Joe Roberts still chasing his teammate Scritch, has got a nice little gap ahead of him. Some good riders to tag on to the back up as well. Manu Gonzalez being the chief of those that is on shoot just ahead of the current table topper at this moment in time. Scritch could be timing this to perfection. I can't see from the naked eye that this heavyweight spot's on him, but it's clearly raining in. Gonzalez goes even quicker. Screech moves into the second. A great lap from the Kent Ryan.
We can back up that correct testing lap time and say that Screech is genuinely quick. Early in 2026, second quickest on now been punted back to 19th place. This should lift him up into the top 10. It does on 1:34.971, which now bumps Lopez out of Q2.
Bouter's pushing on the front end there, wasn't he, in the braking zone? A good lap from Bouter's, but I wouldn't say he's safe just yet. And Helper Keras is behind him now, the Belgian. He is P10, Keras P12, and he's lost a little bit of time there. What is Alonso doing at this moment in time? His second PB, but it's not going to be enough.
He's not going to be in the top 20 with that. He's just come across the line now. We're waiting for Alonso to come through. He didn't improve. He just came over and did a 35.6. So Alonso at the moment, it's nowhere near to top of the line, no improvement. He's deciding to slip towards the treading dotted line behind the top 14. At the moment, the key name outside the top 14. We nearly see Keras lose the front into turn 1. Untu 20th, Alonso 22nd, Canet 23rd. For the moment, we're getting neither of the Mark VDS riders through to Q2. But the monumental shock at the moment with 2.5 minutes remaining is the runaway pre-season favourite Alonso.
Certainly is. Can he find anything on this final couple of laps? He certainly needs it. Does the Colombian want to see through the first bit? Is it personal best, but he's 2.5 tenths off Manu Gonzalez this time. Now he can hold that, and he can even afford to lose a couple of tenths around the rest of that field. He squeezes into that top 14, but he's not giving himself a lot of margin to play for, is the Colombian. Manu Gonzalez has his lap time cancelled, but no such worries for the current fastest rider in this section.
Are we seeing a repeat of what we saw from Moto last season, where Alonso, as we see once again, the rain flags waving, so it's looking like it's falling pretty heavily there, isn't it? That looks like it's at the far end of the circuit. That's generally where the weather comes in from, and we've now got yellows out in sector 1. I think David Alonso's fate is sealed here, Al, with 100 seconds to go in this session. Riders now rolling off. Repeat of last year, in effect, for Alonso, who was so fucking race trim. It's Senerages who's gone down at the first corner. You can see all the depth on the racetrack, so he's gone down quite early by the looks of it, potentially caught out by that shower, but no one has been caught colder than Alonso. The Colombian, the shock of day 1, someone else looks like they're crashing into turn 1. Yellow flags are waving, but of course the riders are hitting the rain into turn 1. David Alonso qualifying 1 bound on this Friday in Burak. Who else has gone down? Certainly looked like Senna was trying to warn the marshals, but someone else was heading into that yellow flag zone. And it was actually going to play a TAS on the Italtrans machine. Where TAS is just over to the left of picture. The bike is on the right. Not a lot really you can do in situations like this. When the rain arrives, because generally it arrives here, it dumps down in serious quantities. So we hope that Adrian Huertas is okay, having ended last season injured when he broke both arms in Valencia. Potentially like a bruising start to 2026 for Adrian Huertas. I think we can call the session over there, Al, with 30 seconds still to go. Huertas is being stretched away from the scene of the crash. We certainly hope that he is okay. See, the airbag had gone off to try and protect him the best possible way from whatever impact he suffered down there at turn 1. Shock among shocks on this Friday afternoon. But Alonso's in Q1 now.
Yeah, massive shock, obviously. Top of the session this morning in FP1, and the rain came down pretty heavy there on some parts of the circuit. There is the aftermath of Adrian Huertas' crash. And obviously, big one. Good to see that he is moving. But when I was trying to peer, not out the window, but down towards turn 1, there was a lot of riders who had gone into the gravel. So, yeah, the heavy rainfall at that part of the circuit clearly catching some unlucky riders out. Have to be said. But yes, a massive shot. The Colombian David Alonso, a pre-season title favourite, of course, in Q1. Work to do on a Friday afternoon for the number 18. Not what the doctor would have ordered for David Alonso. Massive shock, it's got to be said, for the sophomore now in Moto2. Maybe he did have the taste to get into Q2, but this is exactly what we were mentioning. It's all well and good doing some good race rhythm in the early part of the session, but he did leave it late to head back out, and with rain obviously in the air, we saw it in Moto3 as well. I mean, I'm not a team manager, and I'm not one for good reason, but has to be said, maybe they left it a little bit too late for Alonso to head back out and get a Q2 lap time in.
Give some shout outs, don't we, for some of the standout performances in that session. Here's one of them. This was the first name I was going to draw attention to. Alex Escrich in second place. We I think all raised our eyebrows pretty significantly when we saw how quick he was at the Jerez test and thought, well, can Escrich back that up when we go racing and go around? At the moment, the evidence of day one is he can. After taking second place here this afternoon, and Mario actually too, in fifth place for the Infinity Honda Team Major Squad. Delighted to be entering this season fully fit after the many shoulder problems he had at the start of last season. Mario actually through to Q2 in a very fine fifth place.
Yeah, Escrich backing up the Jerez test. Lap times, it wasn't just a one-off over in Jerez. He strung a very good race with them together as well. So great to see Escrich on the Clint Racing team bike up inside that top two. And yeah, you rightly mentioned Mario Aggi, top five, a top job from the Indonesian. Colin Vine got a leg up here, and I noticed he moved up into the top 10, so good stuff from, you know, one of the dark horses in 2025 in a lot of people's eyes. And Keras did just hold on to the top 14 spot as well in P13. It's a great job from the rookie to head straight into Q2 on the first attempt here in 2026. Lopez just missing out. Roberts, who was in the top 14 for a moment or two, he misses out as well. And Salah on his debut for the OnlyFans American Racing Team does make it into that top 14. So some surprise names that we weren't expecting necessarily to be in the top 14. There's some definite names we were expected to be in there out of the top 14. And Guevara, who we didn't see much of in the last half of the session, really did we? Didn't need to, though, either. Set his fastest lap on lap 3 of the session, did 14 overall. And similar to Olgado, really, did the hard work early doors.
There's no question that based on what we've seen today, that Guevara is going to be a genuine podium contender here this weekend, and perhaps the best shot of a Boscoscuro victory this weekend. We have 3 chassis constructors in Moto2, and all of them in the top 3 in that practice session. Gonzalez for Calix, Escrich for forward, and Guevara for Boscoscuro, your 1, 2 and 3. Then for the thoughts of Aaron Canet there in the Smart VDS box, because he didn't get a tune out of his Boscoscuro. Canet down in 24th place, and he will join Alonso in Q1 tomorrow. Manu Gonzalez then with a new all-time lap record, beating his own mark from a year ago, quickest by a tenth of a second in practice. Alex Escrich, a stunning second for the Flip team on his forward chassis. Ivan Guevara, the leading Boscoscuro, third. Daniel Olgado fourth from Mario Aggi in San Aegis. Sasaki had a good afternoon, seventh. Ortodo, Vietti and Bayer. Baltus, who had a bit of a wild ride at times, 11th ahead of Sergio Garcia and Kelvin Keras, the sole rookie into Q2, and Philip Salah backed up his bowling problems by taking the final automatic spot. In Q1 then tomorrow, Lopez, Roberts, Munoz, Van den Borber, Arbolino on tune, Luneta, David Alonso, the big shot in 22nd place, ahead of Huertas, Canet, Corosato, Rueda Navarro, and Alberto Arandes. Moto2 back up with a bang, with shocks and surprises in practice. Gonzalez quickest is no surprise, but Alonso, the title favourite before a wheel was turned, heads through Q1 on the opening weekend. Who goes through the Q2 and who'll be Q1 bound in MotoGP? We'll get our answers with practice coming up next.
circuit for our season opener in 2026. And it's all eyes on the skies for a very, very good reason, because if you are just joining us for this crucial 60-minute practice session in MotoGP, well, right at the tail end of Moto2 Practice session here on Friday afternoon in northeast Thailand, there was a real short, sharp cloud burst which saw the rain flags come out a couple of instants later in Moto2. That shower quickly has dissipated here in Thailand, but there's still a few ominous looking grey clouds off into the distance as we try and find out who are going to be the first 10 riders automatically into our opening Q2 session of the campaign tomorrow. Marco Bezzecchi, factory Aprilia star. Well, it was clear from last weekend's final pre-season showdown right here in Forum that he was going to be a big favourite for glory on the opening weekend. Well, he has lived up to the hype. Bez, he won last weekend in the test and a 1:29.346 in full dry conditions this morning. Saw the Aprilia racing rider lead the way. And it's Fabio Di Gianantonio who did use a new medium rear tyre at the end of the session to set the second best time. 3 Aprilias. A real noteworthy start to the campaign for the Newali factory. 3 Aprilias inside the top 4. Jorge Martin, who had the unwanted distinction of being our first faller in the Premier Class this season. He had a slow speed get off at turn 12, picked himself up and was able to set the third best time. And Ayagura, who really did announce himself to the MotoGP world here last year in Thailand when he was 4th in the sprint, 5th in the Grand Prix on MotoGP debut. Well, he was 4th fastest. A little caveat there, the Japanese rider setting his best time at 1:29.655. A bit like the Gianantonio, he too was also out on fresh medium rubber. Our only world champion Marc Marquez started the defence of his title with the 6th best time this morning at 1:29.772, just 1 place ahead of his teammate Pecco Bagnaia. But thankfully, it was a very short cloud burst here in Thailand, because it has stopped, and in the tropical climate we're spaking up temperatures. The track will dry very, very quickly ahead of this crucial practice session. In the company of Matt Lewis will be in the commentary box, Jack Appleyard down in pit lane. Lewis, as I just mentioned, what a way to kick off 2026 for Aprilia. 3 bikes in the top 4, led by the in-form Marco Bezzecchi. He's trying to go low profile, trying to go under the radar, failing miserably as he leads the way early doors.
Well, there probably used to be a time when Aprilia would come to Buram and hope for rain to bring them into contention. I think they're keen for it to stay away right now because they look like they've got a very competitive package underneath them. Jorge Martin, that competitive package to 3rd place this morning,